Hi guys, story recaps here. I am going to explain is a 2016 South Korean horror film called The Wailing. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film opens with the main guy eating lunch with his family when he receives a phone call. In actuality, the protagonist of the film is a police officer who has been told of a murder. He goes over to the murderer, who is sitting peacefully, suffering from an allergy that has affected his entire body. When the police officer walks in, he discovers the dead victims bound together after being brutally killed. His colleagues inform him that the murder does not occur here. Rather, the dead bodies have been brought here after they have been killed. Later, they arrive at the place of the murder, which was a strange place, as if someone had performed a ritual there. They find a lot of black magic related items there. There seem to be some dead birds. There was a plant there, that after moving further, looked like small skulls. As the officer was ready to touch the plant, he is interrupted by his colleagues. A jungle is shown in the film from here, where a guy was hunting until his feet slipped, leading him to fall and faint. After regaining his senses, he finds a wild man devouring his prey, and that wild man notices him as well. When the wild guy approaches, he notices the wild man's eyes. They aren't human-like, and he believes he is a demon or a ghost. Another police officer provided all of this information to the main character, Jong-gu. According to another police officer, whatever murders happen in the village, they were the result of the Japanese they had watched in the jungle. Jong-gu does not believe him, claiming that the post-mortem report for the murder does not state anything about that. He also claims that the Japanese man is just like us, and that he can't do it. The next day, Jong-gu receives another report of a murder, this time including the murder of a whole family. After the murder, their house burnt down. Later, after reaching at that spot, Jong-gu notices a mysterious girl dressed in a white dress. That girl claimed to have met this couple before they died. Who informed her the Japanese guy was a ghost who had murdered them? That girl takes Jong-gu inside for the proof. She asks the officer, "Have you seen him before?" Jong-gu responds, "Yes, I've seen him before," and she tells him to be careful. Because that Japanese man's next target will very certainly be you and your family. In the meantime, Jong-gu receives a call and is unable to comprehend his conversation. When the officer returns, he notices that the mysterious girl has vanished. He hears unusual noises on the other side of the house, and when he goes to investigate, he discovers a Japanese man brutally eating an animal. He had also seen him and was ready to eat the officer when the officer awakens. We observe that he has only seen the Japanese man in his dreams. The health of Jong-gu's daughter, Hyo-jin, was worsening. He goes to the police station, since he feels she has a normal fever. They then investigate that hunter, who was shown at the beginning of the film, about the Japanese guy. That hunter leads the cops to the spot, where he saw him eating an animal. They have not yet properly researched that location, and the hunter gets struck by lightning, and he is taken to the hospital. The first murderer is seen in the hospital, where his body is horribly bent, and he dies in that condition. When Jong-gu arrives home, he sees his daughter in the same condition as the murderer, but he has control over her. She does not die, but her condition changes as she eats a significant amount of fish that she has never eaten before. Following this, Hyo-jin's mother believes she is under the influence of some evil or ghost. Jang-gu is told by Hyo-jin's mother that we should take her to a good shaman. A shaman is someone who performs rituals in order to keep ghosts and demons away. Jong-gu, on the other hand, doesn't want to believe in these things, so he ignores them and goes to the police station. His colleagues greet him with a man who, like a priest, speaks Japanese well. We may need this man, according to police officials. According to the villagers, everything was happening due of that Japanese man when we went to meet him. After taking the priest, the people proceed to the Japanese man. A police officer sees many photographs of the villagers who had died. Jang-gu, on the other hand, enters a room and assumes that it is a ritual room with various black magic related items. Meanwhile, that Japanese man arrives, both terrified after watching the condition of there. They see him as a ghost. From there, they both escape in horror. Jang-gu is informed by the other police officer that the Japanese man's next target is your family. Jang-gu wonders how you could say such a thing. The officer shows a shoe belongs to her daughter. As a result, when he comes home, he inquires about that Japanese man from Hyo-jin. Hyo-jin grew outraged when she heard his name. After some time, he finds the same allergy on Hyojin's body, as he observed on the killer's body at the beginning of the film. Jang-gu instantly takes the priest to the Japanese man, who has come to see the dead people's photos. When he arrives, he discovers that there is no photograph, so he breaks everything in the rag. As he watches, a Japanese dog attacks him, and he severely kills the dog. As the Japanese man approaches him, he warns, "If you don't leave this place within 3 days, I'll murder you as I murdered that dog." On the other hand, Hyojin's health was deteriorating, so Jang-gu called a shaman into his house. The shaman finds a pot in their house after taking Jang-gu along. He tells him that, whatever is happening to their daughter is the result of that Japanese man. And that Japanese guy isn't even a human being. There are 2 methods to avoid all of this. One is to kill the Japanese man, and the other is to allow me to perform the ritual. He claims that if it doesn't happen, the villages would be subjected to the same fate as your daughter. Jang-gu agrees with him. As seen in the video, the ritual is now taking place in 2 locations, Jang-gu's house and beside the shaman. The other is at Japanese house. To finish his rite, the shaman fashioned a huge doll the size of the Hyojin. Hyojin is in pain just where he strikes the doll. The Japanese man, on the other hand, was in the same state as Hyojin. We note that Hyojin's condition is worsening, and she tells her father that the ritual must be stopped in some way. Jang-gu stops her daughter's ritual and takes her to the hospital. On the other hand, we see a Japanese man crawling out of his house, in pain. He sees that mysterious white-dressed girl there, and she scares him a lot. As we can see, the ceremony is now complete, and the shaman stated that there were 2 ways to finish it. They now have a second option for killing the Japanese. Jang-gu enters the Japanese home with the priest and other men. They don't find Japanese guy, but they do spot a man who appears like a zombie on the backside of the home. They were about to kill him when the priest interfered, and the weird boy bit the priest and died as a result. Jang-gu notices the Japanese man and begins following him in order to grasp him, while he hides from them. When Jang-gu and his colleagues are unable to locate him for an extended period, they return. However, the Japanese man is now being pursued by that white-dressed girl whom he fears a lot. Finally, we see the woman murdering the Japanese man and dumping his body into the Jang-gu car. They are scared after discovering his dead body and decide to rid of it. Later, Jang-gu pays a visit to his daughter, Hyojin, and she fully recovers. Jang-gu feels that everything will be okay after the death of a Japanese guy. Nothing, on the other hand, improves. The injured priest guy has illusions about the Japanese man, and the shaman does as well. He notices that his fellow police officer has murdered all of his family members. He is now sitting on the floor, just as the person was at the beginning of the film. He, too, suffers from a bodily allergy. On the other hand, we see the shaman who was looking for Jang-gu in order to inform him that we are in serious danger. His nose starts to bleed before he discovers Jang-gu, and he starts vomiting on the opposite side. He wishes to escape the village since he is scared of everything, but he is prevented from doing so by some weird creatures. He returns home, as Jang-gu refers to him as shaman. He informs him that murdering the Japanese man was a major blunder. Because he wasn't a bad man, but rather a white-dressed girl, who lives nearby and possesses dark abilities. The Japanese were actually attempting to save us from that girl, but you ruined everything by killing him. He visits Hyojin, who was not at home, and discovers the white-dressed girl outside the house. When he asks about her daughter, she replies that she is inside the house. I'm performing a ritual on her, and as a result, the Japanese man's effect will go away. She informs him that the Japanese is still alive, that he is a bad man, and that he is preparing to eat the overall community. Jang-gu was going to enter the house to get his daughter when she stopped him. It's also stated that you shouldn't go inside until you hear the sound of a hen 3 times. Meanwhile, the hen produces 1 sound, but there are still 2 hen sounds remaining. Jang-gu wants to enter but is sent back by the girl. He was taken aback by how soon she arrived. The priest, on the other hand, is well aware that the Japanese is still alive and that he is a bad man. He goes there to kill the Japanese, but after entering a cave, he really sees him alive. He was performing a ritual in that cave. Whereas, we see Hyojin, who has eaten a large amount of fish. And she was still eating and looking at her mother strangely. And then she watches the knife behind her mother. Outside the home, Jang-gu receives a call from the shaman, who tells him not to listen to the white dress girl's conversation. The girl, on the other hand, forbids him from entering the house. Now we see the Japanese man, who was asked by the priest to tell him who he is, or else I'll kill him. He tells him that he is not a ghost, but rather a normal human being. Is the ghost's foot the same as a human's? He wonders. He claims to have human-like hands, feet, and skin and invites you to touch him. The Japanese man takes out his camera and takes a picture of the priest. On the other hand, we observe Jangu, who goes inside the house over the girl's restriction. When she arrives, the worst happens, she murders her entire family, but despite this, he calls his daughter with affection. The scene cuts to the Japanese man once more, who is now in his true form. His skin is strange, and his head has 2 horns. Everything around him, including his nails and eyes, turns odd. As we all know, the white-dressed girl was a good girl with white powers, but the Japanese man was a real demon. As she has lost everything, the shaman comes and enters Jangu's house, where the white-dressed girl is sitting. Hyojin, on the other hand, was sitting like all murderers do after committing a horrible crime. He enters the home and leaves after photographing all of the dead. A box containing all of the dead people's images falls from his hands as he keeps the pictures near his car. We know the shaman was connected to that Japanese man and was present when he performed a ritual on Hyojin. He was in agony as a result of the white-dressed girl's rituals, not the shaman's. So far, we've seen that the shaman was leaving the village when he was arrested by the Japanese man's supernatural creatures. He worked for him. The film concludes with that Japanese man's great victory. Subscribe and turn on the notification. You can also dislike or like the video because we upload every day.